Welcome back to Man vs. Meeple, the show where we talk about all things board game related. Today we have a Kickstarter preview for a game called Debtzilla. Yes, you heard right, Debtzilla. This one's from Capital Gains Studios, and it is a 2 to 4 player co-op game with some light deck building, but mostly this is a co-op game in the traditional sense of this term.
Yeah, this is very much a satire built around a lot of the American money people. You have a deck of cards that players are going to start with. You're going to be managing those cards through the course of the game. As David said, it's not really a deck building game, so to speak. You're going to be going through these cards and trying to get certain things to proc at specific times. The cards you're going to be acquiring into your deck are one of two different basic types. The starting cards you have, we'll talk about those first. You have some credit card debt, which are basically like dead cards in your hand.
Yeah, they're kind of like just clog up your hand.
You have luxury cards, which help your happiness. Your happiness is basically your special ability that's built into the character that you're playing. When you hit a certain number, you get to proc that special ability. You have money cards. These are just basically every time you play them, you gain $1 on your side. Now on the bottom side of the board, these are gadgets. These ones don't actually go into your deck. They stay on your tableau, and they give you special abilities through the course of the game.
Yeah, basically you're going to be purchasing these. Unlike the other cards, you'll be spending some of your savings on these gadgets. They're going to help you do a number of things in the vigilante phase, which is one of the sort of the combat section of the game. But there are basic gadgets and there are advanced gadgets. The basic gadgets usually cost between $3 and $4. The advanced gadgets, $5 or $6. These are going to let you manipulate dice. They're going to let you hold more gadgets.
Yeah.
And oftentimes these will, like Jeremy said, they won't be placed in your hand or your deck, but they'll be placed next to your player board, either in your inventory or in your base.
Right. Now these gadgets, you can only have one being used per turn unless you have a drone, which allows you to use multiple ones. You can hold as many as you wish on your tableau, but only one can be used every round. The right side of the board is all about trying to manage the bad guy in the game. Now there's multiple different bosses. The one we're showing you here is Debtzilla himself. Okay.
Yeah.
On Debtzilla, he has a track. One track is his health, and the other track is the amount of interest that he is going to accrue when people or citizens die within the game. What he's doing is he's sending out his villains to be able to make all the citizens poor.
Yeah, basically. And Debtzilla just kind of sits there and grows in power throughout the game. Most of the game, you're going to be fighting as villains, which is this last part of the board here. You've got a stack of villains and a stack of citizens. The villains are basically going to be lined up with a particular citizen. You've got poor citizens, rich, middle class, and then the villains range in all sorts of different shapes and sizes. But these basically serve as the combat aspect of the game. You're trying to get through or defeat all of the villains.
Right.
And then once you do that, you're able to take on Debtzilla. The trick being, hopefully Debtzilla hasn't grown so much in power that he's nearly impossible to fight.
Yeah, so this is pretty much a die placement game. If you look at these villains, they each have a number, which is their weakness, so to speak, in the game. These correlate to the die that you'll be rolling. You're going to be rolling 6-sided dice. Of course, like a 3 would go here, a 4 would go here. The citizens have health, with the rich citizens having the most health and the poor citizens having the least health. And what you're looking at is how much damage they're going to be doing round after round. So you're going to be wanting to kill these villains before they, in turn, kill the citizens.
Yeah, and this is a great point at which to really underscore the theme here.
Yeah.
Jeremy just used what everyone would use, terms like health and damage.
Yeah.
In this game, it's wealth and scamming.
Yeah.
So these villains are going to scam these citizens for their money, and as soon as they go bankrupt or die, they're going to be taken out of the game, and you're basically, like Jeremy said, trying to save these citizens. That is one of the ways you can lose the game, is if all the citizens die.
Each player is also going to start with 2 die. They'll be able to have the opportunity to get more dice into their pool, either through housing loans or through special gadgets. Also, each player is going to start with one very specific character. This character has a happiness track, as I mentioned. This happiness track will allow them to proc their special move, but they also have a regular move or an ability that they can use round after round. If, again, talking about the satire, this is Tweetman. This is obviously Donald Trump, and he actually can steal money from the citizens himself to be able to get wealth for himself.
Yeah, I love the fact that the parody has like 2 levels. There are superheroes that you're probably familiar with, and then there are world leaders that you're maybe not as familiar with, but they're definitely there in the parody.
So go ahead and talk about the gameplay itself.
Yeah, so the gameplay is broken down into 4 phases, most of which is going to be spent with the first 3 of those phases before the boss fight. In the first phase, which is the working phase, you're going to take a 5-card hand. You're going to play all those cards out and basically gather everything that they allow you to gather. Like Jeremy said, there may be credit card loans that don't let you do anything. They just clog up your hand. But if you play a luxury, you're going to tick up the happiness chart up to, to hopefully trigger your special ability. You can take savings cards, going to give you some money. There's other cards that, interestingly enough, like debt refinancing, you can play that, and you're going to get money for all the debt that you've played that round. So in the working phase, you're going to play those cards, gather those resources, if you will, and then you can do one of 2 things. You can either take another one of these cards from the working phase board, and that's free. There's no purchasing. You just take one of those cards, or you're allowed to pay off some of your debt that you played that round. So the key thing to remember here is, this is called Debtzilla. And whenever you take a debt card, there may be some advantages to doing so, but when you do, it's going to increase the interest on Debtzilla or his strength and hit points. Likewise, if you pay off debt, it's going to decrease that. And when you pay off debt, there's sometimes some other benefits, like some of these cards can go into your base and have an ongoing effect through the rest of the game.
And it needs to be noted too, as you're looking at this player board, this is a prototype version. Some of the cards have been changed since the time that we've actually played the game. Talk about the insurance card too, because this is really important too. One of the ties into the game is the insurance. The insurance allows you, when it's played on your turn, to gather one of these tokens. Now, we didn't even mention the Debtzilla abilities. Through the course of the game, when Debtzilla's interest goes up to very specific levels, if you look on this chart here, when it goes to a very specific area, he'll proc one of his abilities. When that procs, this goes face up, and it does a blue event for all the characters. Most definitely something bad for everybody. But that card will actually stay in play until all of the villains are killed, and then Debtzilla kind of comes out from behind the shadows and then attacks everybody with those things that have happened through the course of the game.
Those cards will effectively become villains once the villains are gone.
So coming back to the insurance card, when you have these insurance cards and you have these tokens, you can expend the tokens to prevent one of these things from happening to you. So you'll be able to use your abilities or whatnot that normally wouldn't be able to be used when those come out.
For example, one of those things, when a Debtzilla event card comes out, it might say use 1 less die this time during the vigilante phase. You could trade in a shield and ignore that.
Then you're allowed to, if you so wish, buy one of the gadgets.
This is the shopping phase.
So
go ahead.
When you buy a gadget, you simply look on the left-hand side. That's the amount of money you have to expend. When you take that gadget, you place it onto the left side of your player board. Now, as we said, during your turn, when you're actually doing combat against the villains, you're only allowed to use one of the specific gadgets that you've collected, unless you have a drone that allows you to use multiple ones.
In your inventory, you need a drone in order to equip more than one gadget. Now, it should be noted, none of the gadgets here on this board are like this, but some of the advanced gadgets, when you acquire them, they actually go straight into your base. And the base, unlike the inventory, all of that is equipped and goes on forever. And some of those are gadgets. Some of those will be some of the debt cards that you've paid off that allow you an ongoing effect. So there's a little bit of variety between your inventory and your base.
Next thing that happens is you're going to actually go over there and combat the villains.
The villain phase, or the vigilante phase, is where you combat the villains. At the beginning of this, everyone's going to take basically their little meeple, their player token, and as a group, since this is a co-op, you're going to decide where you go. Jeremy and I can decide, you know what, let's team up and go here on Corruption Rat to save this poor citizen. At that point, we're going to take our 2 die, unless we have some cards that give us more. We're all going to roll it at the same time, and we're looking for a 3 or a 4 in this case.
And again, you can use any of the gadgets or special abilities that you have on your character to modify those dice. In some cases, even if you have very specific cards, you can modify the dice of the people that are helping you. They're also around the table. What you're trying to do is to hit all the weakness points on that particular villain. If you do, fantastic. That villain is removed from the game. If you do not, bad things happen to your citizens.
Basically, you let you determine how many of the villains you defeated. Once you've done that, whichever villains were not defeated are going to attack the citizen that they're lying above. So basically, you're going to then look at their scam value and reduce the wealth of the citizen below them by that value.
That's right.
If, by chance, it reduces a citizen's value down to 0, that citizen will be discarded from the game. However, first you're going to increase Debtzilla's interest by the maximum wealth of that citizen. So for instance, a rich citizen going bankrupt, that's going to tick Debtzilla up 10 spaces. Again, triggering those event cards, making him tougher to fight at the end of the game.
Right, and Debtzilla has a total health track of 99. So if you auto reach 99...
Yes, that's the dead apocalypse. Bad thing. You do not want that happening.
Yeah, any time that you do not defeat a specific villain, but you've done some damage to them, you are allowed to leave your character on that and lock those dice into that very specific position. Just knowing that on the next round, you won't have that particular dice to roll. You're still only going to have one of the 2 dice that you have left.
Exactly. It is a risk-reward thing that you're playing, and that can change considerably in how you approach that, whether you're playing with 2 players or up to 4 players for sure. But you can leave your dice on there. Should be noted also that if at any point you want to abandon that choice, you can. You just have to take your character and the dice off of the card.
So the game can also end if all the citizens within the game are killed, which is what you don't want to do. However, the other way to get the game to end is to kill all the villains and then to attack Debtzilla himself. When Debtzilla comes out, it locks a couple different aspects out of the game. No longer are you allowed to buy or manipulate your deck anymore. You can't grab any more of these cards that are on the top of the board. You're simply using the cards that you've collected and using those round after round. But the villains are gone, so what comes into play? All the cards that you've procced through the course of the game will then become the villains that you will have to attack. Now on these cards, they have special fighting abilities that will also go above the citizens that are left over. And what you're trying to do here is, again, lock dice into very specific positions depending upon the number of players. So in a 2-player game, you're only locking down the blue positions. In a 3-player, the red, and then the 4, the yellow as well. Right. And then you're just trying to survive. You're trying to kill all of these different cards that Debtzilla has made come out and not make all your citizens go away. Yeah,
these cards basically become attacks that Debtzilla, like hot money is like fire breath, things like that. It should be noted too that these are much more powerful than the typical villains. Like hot money here does 10 scam damage, so
it's going to kill anything.
He's going to obliterate something unless you take care of that right away. The other thing is, so during this Debtzilla phase, you're going to play the game like you normally would. Like Jeremy said, you can no longer acquire these cards or do anything to manipulate your deck. However, there's a black market that's open at this point. You can still buy gadgets during that phase. However, at double the price. So it's pretty pricey, so you might have to take your licks from Debtzilla a couple times before you have enough money to buy any gadgets, really.
Yeah, this is a really cool, unique take on a cooperative game. It has a lot of cool things going for it. There's a lot of stuff that you need to do in the beginning of the game to get ready for the end game. Because if you go into the end game and you've procced a lot of these special abilities and you don't have the gadgets or the resources to be able to attack him at the end, you're going to be in a lot of trouble.
Right, you definitely need, and especially as a co-op with multiple players, you're going to need some people to focus on maybe gadgeting up. Some people maybe
getting extra dice.
Manipulating dice or credit or debt, rather, to get dice. Things like that, so you can really approach it, like Jeremy said, with a nice, well-balanced team. It also be noted, too, in a 2-player game, which Jeremy and I have played, you can actually, during the fights, pull in summon heroes. Now, they have a pretty pricey cost to do that, but you're basically getting effectively a 3rd player in this case with their 2 dice and their ability that turn. So it can definitely shift the tables.
So guys, that is Debtzilla from Capital Gains Studio. If you guys have any questions about them, make them in the comments below. We'll answer them for you. Subscribe to us, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and everything else that we do. And we will catch you guys next time.
Bye-bye.
Season 2 of Man vs. Meeple is sponsored in part by Cool Stuff Inc. Cool stuff in stock at coolstuffinc.com.